Imagine spending years climbing a ladder, only to reach the top and realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. This isn't just a metaphor, it's the lived experience of countless high achievers who've discovered that success, as they were taught to pursue it, left them feeling empty. The question isn't whether achievement matters, it's whether we've confused the scorecard with the game itself. For decades, researchers have studied what's called the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness despite major positive or negative life changes. A landmark 1978 study found that lottery winners were no happier than non-winners just months after their windfall. More recently, neuroscientist Kent Berridge's work at the University of Michigan revealed something fascinating. Our brains process wanting and liking through entirely different systems. We can intensely want something, a promotion, recognition, a milestone, while deriving surprisingly little satisfaction from actually having it. This disconnect helps explain why achievement-based self-worth creates a psychological trap. When your sense of value depends on external validation, you're essentially outsourcing your emotional stability to forces you can't control. Psychologist Kristen Ness' research on self-compassion shows that people who base their self-worth on achievements report higher anxiety, more depression, and, ironically, greater fear of failure than those who don't. Here's what happens in your brain when you tie your worth to achievement. Each success triggers a dopamine release, that feel-good neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. But dopamine is about anticipation and pursuit, not satisfaction. It's the chemical that makes you want, not the one that makes you content. Think of it like this. Achievement is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Each success briefly satisfies, then immediately raises the bar for what counts as enough. Your brain adapts to each new level of achievement, a process called hedonic adaptation, and what once felt extraordinary becomes your new normal. Meanwhile, the brain's reward system becomes hypersensitive to anything that threatens your achievement identity. A single setback doesn't just feel like a failure, it feels like a threat to your fundamental worth. This activates your amygdala, your brain's threat detection system, triggering the same stress response as physical danger. Fulfillment operates differently. It engages the brain's ventral striatum and prefrontal cortex in ways that promote sustained well-being rather than temporary highs. Fulfillment comes from alignment, when your actions reflect your values, when you experience autonomy, competence, and meaningful connection with others. This plays out in recognizable patterns. You've probably encountered the successful executive who checks all the traditional boxes: prestigious job, impressive salary, enviable lifestyle, yet struggles with persistent dissatisfaction. Or perhaps you've felt it yourself, achieving a long-sought goal only to feel a hollow sense of, is this it? Consider how this affects daily decisions. When achievement defines you, you avoid risks that might lead to failure, even if they align with your values. You say yes to opportunities that look good on paper but drain you emotionally. You compare yourself constantly to others, turning every interaction into an implicit competition. The data bears this out. Research shows that people with achievement-contingent self-worth are more likely to experience burnout, relationship difficulties, and what psychologists call conditional living, making choices based on external approval rather than internal alignment. They're also more vulnerable to depression when facing setbacks, because each failure doesn't just represent a lost goal, it threatens their entire sense of self. Conversely, people who cultivate fulfillment independent of achievement report greater resilience, more satisfying relationships, and paradoxically, often achieve more in the long run because they're not paralyzed by fear of failure. So how do you shift from achievement-based worth to fulfillment-based living? First, develop what psychologists call unconditional self-regard. This doesn't mean ignoring your flaws or abandoning goals. It means recognizing that your fundamental worth isn't something you earn, it's inherent. Practice separating your identity from your accomplishments. You are not your job title, your bank account, or your last success. Second, identify your core values independent of external validation. What matters to you when no one is watching or applauding? Research by psychologist Stephen Hayes shows that clarifying values and taking value-aligned action, even small steps, significantly increases life satisfaction. Third, cultivate what Neff calls self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a struggling friend. When you face setbacks, notice the self-critical voice and intentionally soften it. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about removing the toxic layer of self-judgment that serves no productive purpose. Fourth, pursue what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called autotelic experiences, activities that are intrinsically rewarding regardless of outcome. These engage you fully, where the doing itself is the point, not what it gets you. Finally, track moments of meaning rather than moments of achievement. At day's end, ask, when did I feel most alive? When did I act in alignment with who I want to be? This gradually retrains your attention towards what actually nourishes you. Achievement and fulfillment aren't mutually exclusive, but they're fundamentally different pursuits. Achievement asks, what can I get? Fulfillment asks, who am I becoming? The irony is that when you stop chasing success to prove your worth and start building a life that reflects your values, you end up both more successful and more satisfied. The latter doesn't disappear, you just stop needing it to feel like you're standing on solid ground.